Already in. Hello, Nelly.
Hello.
Hi,
It's Sunday morning.
it's Sunday afternoon.
Sunday morning live.
Yes, here we
SML.
are.
SML.
And namaste on a Sunday.
SNL. Sunday.
You're not. Your head's not in the picture, Ma.
No, I was just turning on a little light here. Hi, everyone. Hi, Nilesh. Hi, Ranka.
Ah, there's. Let me get a hello from Aranka. I gotta find the button there. That's a big hello.
Hello, and it's for her Sunday night.
And there's just a regular plain
Morning and
hello all.
And a Sunday morning.
Sunday night. It's not night there yet, is it?
She's in Thailand, Swamiji, so yes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Uh-huh. She's hard to keep track of. You just never know where she's going to show up.
What do you call it? Like a world trotter?
Jet setter.
A jet setter. Hi, B. Hi, y'all. Johnny.
Hi, all.
Y'all. Hi. Hi, Anika. So everybody's going to have to help us out with us. We were chatting yesterday here at, last evening about what to talk about today for Sunday. And it was sort of a carryover from some of the conversation yesterday. And we came up with the idea about talking about yoga in religion. Now, I don't have an exact agenda of what to do with that, but when we were talking yesterday about Lectures on Yoga book by Swami Rama, I remembered that I had an original version of this book.
Oh.
And that I was talking yesterday about the fact that our next section of that series is on asana. And this was one of the books that was rewritten very early on. And it ended up with all sorts of many pages, probably 30 pages of stuff like this that was added, that was not in the original book. So after the conversation, it prompted me to go into the library and pull out the original book. I found this online somewhere, 5 to 10 years ago, and bought it. And it's the original.
Wow.
Lectures on Yoga. What?
No, I'm excited. So, but I'm not interrupting you.
Well, it is so original. It was published at Bhargava Press in Kanpur, India, and there's not even a year in it. There's not a publication year. There's no ISBN number. It's just
timeless.
Huh?
It's timeless.
It's
like
timeless.
All the scriptures in India, they don't have a date.
Yeah, they don't care about time. Raja said it's timeless.
Timeless, nice.
The publishers say the book Lectures on Yoga is being published for us by the Himalayan International Institute of Yoga Science and Philosophy. It presents the lectures of His Holiness Sri Swami Rama in book form. These lectures were delivered to the Western audience during his recent world tour. This was around 1970. And we deem it a great privilege to get the opportunity being blessed by Sri Swamiji. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, and so now this is interesting. I'll read this little bitty piece here, Ma. You'll find this intriguing. It contains a little piece of the history, the first part of the history, that there's more history that came later from this. And implied between the lines is Swami Rama left this location and moved to Chicago, and then eventually moved to Pennsylvania with the Institute. Lectures on Yoga contains the lectures which were delivered in the city of Minneapolis in the United States by Swami Rama's recent world tour. They were recorded by Howard Jutt, and it was for this purpose that Mr. Howard visited India and arranged for the speedy publication of these lectures. So the lectures were given, they were recorded, they were transcribed. This was in Minnesota, not in Chicago and not in Pennsylvania at Homestead. So that's just a little trivia there. This is the introduction of the book. Yoga is applied psychology of the ancient Hindus, it says here. Of course, this was printed by Hindus in India, in Kanpur. It is a psychophysiological culture which was systematized and organized by the codifier Maharshi Patanjali some 4,000 years ago. So time is always different. This says 4,000 years ago, which would be 2000 BC approximately. And the Western scholars like to say that Patanjali and Yoga Sutra's time was somewhere between about 200 to 400 year of the current era, of the AD, not the BC. And so the exact dates are not known. Elsewhere, Swami Rama explains that that was known because Patanjali is the family name. It's a lineage name. It became like the name of a school. So it's the Patanjali Institute, basically. Called his system Raja Yoga. The word yoga has been used in a generic sense for karma yoga, bhakti yoga, laya yoga, jnana yoga, hatha yoga, and raja yoga, etc. But according to Swami Rama, the word yoga has been used in Christian Bible as yoke. Yogis like St. Anthony, St. Francis, St. Teresa, and others used to practice Raja Yoga. Here's the key sentence here that I wanted to get to. If one dives deep in ancient scriptures of different religions of the world, one will find that Raja Yoga was practiced directly or indirectly by their saviors and sages. Now, just because this sentence is in this old book that is now almost 50 years old, just because it's printed here does not make it true. So I'm not making an argument on the truth of that statement because it's in this book and is quoted by Swami Rama. But I mention it because it contains the principle. And it's something that Swami Rama was talking about when he very first left the Himalayas and came out into the world and started talking about this stuff. So at least for him, he sees yoga in the religions. A sort of summary comment is that yoga is in religion, but religion is not in yoga. And then we each have to ponder what that might mean. And then we all get to come to our own conclusions. And so the principles are there. One of the things, I don't know exactly where to, let me buy Inika. I had Inika on all that time there. And there's Scott saying, Aranka is a gypsy. Yes, that's gypsy, that's a good word. Scott says, hi, everybody. But I was pondering of this, since we talked about this last night. One of the things that came into my mind, just as an example of yoga in religion, and this comment I'm about to make, it's just an observation. I don't claim it to be proof, and I cannot even intellectually argue the point in a debate sense to prove that it's a true comment. But in Christianity, many, if not most, of the denominations within Christian tradition speak of the Trinity. They don't all agree with this. Some completely renounce this notion of the Trinity and have different views. And I don't know which group has which belief. But the Trinity is what they call Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in English. I don't know what the Latin is of those terms. But when you explore what the Christian scholars and the academic people who study religions and do have knowledge of these things, when you look up what is meant by this term Holy Spirit, one of the explanations of Holy Spirit is that it is the breath of God, and that God is breathing out the universe. Well, what does that sound like in
Prana.
yoga? Huh?
Prana.
Sounds like prana, doesn't it? And what is Adi prana? It's the first prana, that there is a surging outward of prana. There is a manifesting process. And if you look, I've done this, and I'm not saying this is a reliable, intellectually, academically reliable source, but if you look at Wikipedia, if you look at the online website called Wikipedia, and obviously Wikipedia is constructed of many, many, many people inserting their opinions. And if somebody puts an opinion that the majority doesn't like, they can boot it out. So Wikipedia is not necessarily accurate. I know this. I have personal experience with that because I tried to help add insight about Yoga Nidra into the Wikipedia article. I finally gave up on that effort 10 years ago, when whatever I put in there about Mandukya Upanishad and Vaishnavar Tejas and Prajna and Turiya, whatever I put there was eliminated by the other editors of that Wikipedia article. So the Wikipedia article on Yoga Nidra is very, to put a mild word on it, very misleading. There is one Swami in India that his followers claim that he personally invented Yoga Nidra. And that information continues to be in the Wikipedia article on Yoga Nidra. The only reason I'm mentioning that is to say that I'm not trying to make a claim that Wikipedia is 100% authoritative, because I know that it is not. But that said, if you go to the Wikipedia article in there and you type in the word God, G-O-D, and click on it, it will take you to a Wikipedia page called God, and you can see that it links to many other sub-articles related to the word God. And so it includes even the word monism. Well, this is pretty much the same as what yoga is talking about with Shiva and Shakti, and Advaita, non-dualism, is essentially the same as monism. So this article, the consensus of these people putting that in there, talk about that one of the ways in which the word G-O-D is used is as one reality, not merely being one religious view of a man in the sky. So different of the modern religions, if we were to say, what are the names of the biggest religions in the world, it's easy to find the names of those religions and their sects or denominations, easy to do. So there's different meanings to these things. There's different subtleties to it. And in my journey of studying these world religions, I find all over the place traces of the yogic principles. And in mysticism, in Western mysticism, in the mystic traditions of Asia and throughout the world, the principles of yoga are there, and we find them. I think, and it's just an opinion, that where we can kind of get confused over this is when we accidentally turn the word yoga into a thing. We turn yoga into an object, as if there is an institution called the religion of yoga, and there is a pope of yoga, or a head imam, or a main lama, or something like that, and he is the big boss of the religion called yoga, and there just is no such thing.
That was also on my thought, because the first thing I think we have to see is that the world has made yoga into a thing. And so it may sound like to say, well, yoga is the biggest of them all. They're even bigger, as my thing is even bigger than all the religions and bigger than all the philosophies. And so and then it becomes it sounds very arrogant, because it became a thing, and now it encapsulates
your thing.
yeah. And that has to be removed to see that it's not a thing, it's not an ism, it's not a religion, it's union. it's the one absolute reality, yoga. And so then it's a different.
And as a process, it is the process of awakening to that.
Yes, beautiful. And if we look at from that, then yoga is in everything, that process.
If we snoop around, we find it. Yeah. Another example that is there for me is the word love. Yeah. In the Christian Bible, it's right there in the Gospels. It says, literally, love the Lord with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. And then it says, number 2, love your neighbor as yourself. So many Christian people think that their religion is the religion of love. And it's a fair comment. It seems to me it's a fair comment because there is a lot of love going on within that tradition. There's also a lot of hate, but there's a lot of love. But if you claim ownership of love, that's where you go wrong. And it's like saying, well, Hinduism and Buddhism and Zoroastrianism and the Sikhs, they know nothing about love because they're not Christian. And obviously that's absurd. So the notion of yoga is a process, it's not a thing, somewhat analogous to the word love. So there's plenty of room for the principles of yoga to be in other cultures, other traditions, and in religions. In the book of Psalms, in the Old Testament of the Western Bible, that's my choice of words, Western Bible, because that's what it sort of is to me. In the book of Psalms, there's one verse in there that says very simply, be still and know that I am God. There's yoga, there's the whole thing. Now, if you think of the word God as being that man in the sky sort of being, and he's up there, and we are the sinners and the idiots, and we're down here sort of groveling to get his blessings, and he's a him up there, then it's saying, be still and know that that dude up there is God. Said playfully calling him dude. But if you hold the word God as referring to that monistic, non-dualistic, one infinite absolute reality whose nature is something like Satchitananda, existence, consciousness, and bliss. If we hold the word God in that way, then we individually are saying, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am a wave in the ocean of bliss, and therefore I am ocean qualitatively. And so if we see it like that, then we say, wow, the core principle of yoga, there it is. It's in that one verse. Be still and know. And I don't have good recall in the moment of lots of examples of this, but I've run into many examples of where I see yoga in the various religions of the world. And my studies of religion have not been in any formal academic, guided, taught, professorial to student kind of relationship. I never studied it that way. But as an amateur student of it, because of yoga, I have pursued it because I felt like in terms of what I do, it's useful, if not necessary, for me to make some degree of exploration of these various traditions. Hi, Gurvinder. There's Gurvinder.
Hi, Gurvinder. And hi, everyone else who joined us in the meantime.
I think we got everybody else. We got Nelly. No guru, no head of yoga. It's up to me and us. We could have a vote. Who do we all want to be the president of yoga? Hi, Anna. So
well, it was so nicely relates to the subject that we had in the Yoga Sutras, the direct root of Om, and that there it was mentioned that the very first teacher was taught by that creative process. And so, in a sense, that out of the ground out of which also the teachers were taught by that. So the first teachers were not even people, so to speak. It's that manifesting force itself that in it
Pure
contains
consciousness, yes.
wisdom.
Yeah, and yeah, I think you're freezing, Mom.
And the all teachers too. Can you still hear me?
Just now I can, but we lost about 15 or 20 seconds of your voice.
I was saying that a few days ago during the Yoga Sutras, we were talking about the direct root of Om and Ishvara Pranidhana and the ground that as Brahman, the ground reality, and then that manifesting force that comes out of everything, out of the ground. Now I'm stumbling because I would like to repeat what I said, but even the teachers were taught from that. There was no first teacher. There was no first person that says now the whole lineage of yoga starts. Is that manifesting force itself that contains all the knowledge. And so
it is from that we learn.
Yes.
Whether it's functioning as a being called teacher is a totally different question.
And so no matter where you are in the whole of manifestation, you can tap into that. And so when it happens on Earth, on any geographical location, when someone taps into that teaching force or that knowing and thus understands and does yoga, unifies with all, and it then starts to spread. That's how religions have started. They become then isms and
now the question then I'm wanting to say, the question then to ponder is, if we take what you just said and explained so nicely and simply, if we take that principle and then we look around in the various religions, do we find that there also? And if we do, then we are finding yoga contained within the religions. Yes. Or does yoga stand over here as separate from and a different opinion to those other people?
I really like when you use the word process. It's the process of waking up. It's the process of allowing yoga to happen, in a sense, which is always there. And
where do you find that process of waking up in religion?
I think this is what Muhammad has done, for example.
Okay.
And I don't know that much of the details, but when you hear him speak, whatever I've learned through Mir and others, is that when the wisdom is shared, it's so much the same. La ila la la ila ila la. There's no God but God. There's only one absolute reality. That's yoga. I mean, that's when you hear the process.
That's what I was fishing for.
Thought of.
From Allah,
is to hear some other examples of that, and that's a good example.
Yes.
So that's viewing Allah through those eyes of the mystic. Yes. And then you say, I came from Allah and I returned to Allah. And
that's another one that Mir shared with us. Yeah.
Yes. And so a good example. And that kind of process that you just said, that process of reflecting on what yoga is about, and then looking within the traditions such as Islam and saying, do I see it there? Mm-hmm. And then we can observe, wow, yes, I do see it there. It doesn't mean that the imams see it there. It doesn't mean they agree with that. When you mention Islam, one of the things that comes to my mind, and again, I'm no expert on this. I've never been Muslim in this lifetime, and so I have no credentials or anything to say this, but I have seen where others have pointed out that this word jihad, some say, has become quite distorted, where it's taken to mean our duty is to kill off all of the other people, literally go out and start wars and kill people, but that the word jihad means to fight the inner struggle of life with your own ego.
Yes.
Which starts to sound kind of similar to the story of the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna is not literally killing other human beings of his community. It's being willing to fight the battle of life with your own samskaras.
Yes.
And so it's a symbolic way of saying it. And that when I have seen this comment described by others who know more than me about Islam, and this word jihad, where they say it's about the inner struggle of life. It's not about what you do with your physical human being neighbors.
No.
Other communities, that they're the bad guys. When I hear it like that, I say, wow, that's pretty cool.
That is.
And it sounds like somebody has stumbled into the same universal truth, universal process that we know as yoga.
Yeah. Even there's a Disney movie, I think, from Moses, and watching it one day, I just was so deeply struck by the beautiful symbolism of how all these little details in the whole story just symbolizes the fighting off of the kleshas, in the sense, and then bringing the people back to the promised land, in which the ocean splits. And in a sense, it sounded, for me, it was just one way to hold, as in a sense of opening Sushumna, so that everyone can travel up the spine. There was so much, and so also, again, when we have glasses that are less bounded by
this. The way you just described that ocean splitting, I like that. That's a nice way of saying that.
So yeah, so you're because of these practices and the struggles in the beginning is because everything is in boxes. But again, I also mentioned last week somewhere is that one of the things that happens during this process of yoga, of universal love, of however you want to call it, in which there's an awakening, the difficultiness falls away, the boxes fall away, the categorization falls away, the necessity to intellectually categorize everything and then in those boxes link everything together. It just gradually falls away. And then when you have those glasses on, which is without boundaries, then indeed you see the metaphors swimming around you everywhere. You hear people speak. I was trying to find
I also find value. We may sit there and let go of what you call boxes.
Yes.
But do I have the ability to look at a box that another person is living in? Those other people are living in a box. Do I have the ability and the open heart to love and respect them and look at their box and see within their box
that it contains?
Box?
Yes.
And I think personally, it's just a personal thing. I think there's great value in the attempt to do that.
Definitely, because what comes with that is that universal love, and then you don't need to change the other person's box in which it is in, because you see it.
Because otherwise we can accidentally end up saying to the other people, my box is bigger than your box, and your box is defective, and you need to trade in your box on my bigger box. Yeah. And accidentally we end up becoming proselytizers of a different box.
Yes. Well said. Thank you.
Which was not our intent in the first place.
I was trying to remember the name of a Catholic priest that about a year ago or so I watched some lectures on YouTube, and because I ran into him, maybe Scott, you remember, because you posted a video on Enneagram that he did, and I just was intrigued by the way he was talking, because I enjoy, when someone is clearly in a specific box speaking about this process, and it's just, that knots on, if I may use that Southern thing. And it was just a joy to hear him speak with clarity and simplicity. And so I said, this dude knows what he's talking about. And there's the process again. And he is teaching people to actually do the practices to get to that experience himself. And he's a Catholic priest.
And you're saying that you heard yoga.
Yes.
What we know as yoga in what he was saying.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So
now
I don't remember his name.
Yoga is found everywhere, but it cannot be owned. Okay, if we don't own yoga, I think we have to see that we don't own yoga. if we own yoga and we claim that it is ours or something like that, and that we are the unique people of yoga, we are the yogis, then do we have the capacity to see the yoga in the person who has a different box? So I think there's something to what you're saying, Nellie, personally, that it's helpful to not hold it in that kind of way.
Yeah.
And that it is everywhere, but it's not mine. And then I think that opens the door to if I won't do that, then I have a closed door, and there's little chance that I will be able to see the yoga in the other person's box.
Yeah.
So I think there's something.
Something else was there.
I don't like the
Right.
isms, because it seems to separate and at times get us into hostility. Yes, and what you said there, Nellie, to me touches on a part of this that I have struggled with over time. I get better at it, but what if I'm talking to a person who does have separate and feels towards hostility and is in an ism? Am I able to see that even though that person is stuck in their box in that kind of way, that still the seed of the yogic principle is still there?
I was suddenly remembering.
What do you remember?
I was remembering Samyam was saying something very clearly and so beautifully in his last chapter on Living with Himalayan Masters. So I looked it up quickly and I posted it in the.
Yeah. All right. I'll put it there. Everybody can see it.
We do not believe in conversion, changing cultural habits, or in introducing any God in particular. We respect all religions equally, loving all and excluding none. Neither do we oppose any temples, mosques, or church, nor do we believe in building homes for God while ignoring human beings. Our firm belief is that every human being is a living institution or a temple.
Yeah. Nicely said, isn't it?
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. The dude has a way with words, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So if we are holding this kind of principle individually, if we individually are holding this kind of principle, then we ought to, it seems to me, be able to see that unity in diversity, even within another group of people who does not have that openness and rejects others. I can see that what we're talking about from the perspective we're talking about, we can have a broader vision and therefore not necessarily have to pass judgment on the other person whose eyes are not yet quite so open.
Especially if they do it and hurting other people's because they think that theirs is better. You can still see the essence. Swamayama speaks about non-essentials and essentials in the religion, and I think that's also a nice division of how to look at things.
And the I am right and they are wrong is probably not essential.
Yeah, it's very hymsic.
But then what do we as yogis do in relation to those people who do hold that view that they are right and I am wrong? Do we have the ability to be open enough to hold and remember that that person is still is Atman, that still person is still one with God or one with divine and all that kind of stuff, even though there is a limited perspective going on.
And then if I may playfully say this, because this verse has been a tremendous help for me, and it sounds a little bit belittling, but then there is a verse in the Bhagavad Gita that says, those who are confused by the gunas, leave those dull little withered knowing ones at peace.
Yeah, leave them at peace.
Yeah.
Nellie adds here, at times I need to keep on practicing. And then Aranka adds, yes, Nellie, me saying practice. Yes, Johnny summarizes in Johnny's succinct way by saying inclusive, not exclusive. And sometimes, isn't it true, sometimes that is not always easy to do.
No.
How to be inclusive of even those people who are themselves very exclusive. If they exclude me because I'm a yogi, does that mean I exclude them? How can I be inclusive of them as being infinite in all of those ways of saying it, while recognizing that that person does not hold inclusiveness? That person holds a policy, a stance of exclusion. And I am one of the people that they exclude. I've run into some people that think because I'm a yogi, I'm a Swami, that I'm just a sinner and I'm going to burn in hell. I may sit there and think, well, that's just completely wrong. But do I then accidentally do something exclusionary the way I hold that person in my mind and heart? It's tricky, isn't it?
It has to do with clashes.
Yes.
Because if we have aversion against smaller boxes, so to speak, then in a sense, not to be again all self-centered in a sense of little s self, but in the big s self, is that even to carry that hatred is like a contradiction of what I'm trying to reach.
Yeah.
So,
Terry says, I usually say something like, I believe what we call God is actually so inconceivable to human beings, so other than that I believe every attempt to describe or define it somehow valid. I accept and celebrate them all. It's a way of saying it, isn't it? Yeah.
The clarity of Bhuti can be there, that the way of other people holding reality is harming other people in reality. That discernment, Buddhi can make that discernment without necessarily adding.
Rosalind says, I'm around Southern Baptists. I generalize terms. They do too. Spirituality as opposed to religion. And I do understand the grammar, but notice how easy it comes out of our minds, because my mind would generate comparable words quite easily, where we say spirituality as opposed to religion. Sitting right in the middle of the phrase is the word opposed. And this is an example of the way in which how with the best of intentions we can accidentally have the word opposition come out. I know that was not your intent in saying that, but it comes out. It's just part of language. So we say spirituality as opposed to religion.
Or versus, yeah.
Or versus.
I mean, they're the same. Yeah.
And we have just created accidentally the appearance of an adversarial relationship. Indeed, yeah, indeed, yeah. So it's tricky. All of this stuff is tricky. I guess from my side, about once last night when we sitting here, when Raj and Rojo and I, when this popped up, the idea of having some conversation about this today, a big aspect of that has been sitting with me since then, and walking and pondering over this since that happened, which is what usually happens when we have something we're going to talk about on Sunday, is to me that there's great value in all of us continually pondering these things and learning something about what other subcultures and denominations and religious people do, so as to be more and more able to not accidentally be in opposition to anybody, and recognize that everybody is of that same one source. My wish, my personal wish that has evolved over quite a few years, if I had one wish for humanity, the way I would say it is that if humanity in total, all 8 billion of us, if we could do one simple thing, most of our problems would disappear. If we could simply acknowledge that we all have arisen from the same source. We may have vastly different opinions, but it appears to be self-evident that whatever the name of that source is, or however I may have an opinion about that, or you may have an opinion about it, we may disagree about those things, but if we try to force ourselves to agree on those, that's where we get into trouble and we end up fighting. But it seems self-evident that whatever the nature of that source is, we have all arisen from that same one source, and nobody is excluded from that. That's just my 2 cents worth on where I've come out over years of time hanging out with yoga and with pondering the nature of cultures and countries and subcultures and religions and sects and denominations and all that. It just seems self-evident that we all arose from the same source. And if we could all kind of agree on that one simple principle, I'm not trying to run a campaign to do that. I have no idea how to do it. In some sense, I wish I knew how to do that, but I don't. Johnny says, I've heard Christian preachers reject religiosity as well. Yes. Yes. Isn't that refreshing to hear that? And that there's something bigger.
Churchianity, I've heard that word.
We had an activity going on here for several years locally. It ended about five years ago, I think it was. I think you went to one or two of those meetings, Ma.
Mm-hmm. With the interfaith.
It was called an interfaith group that was locally here in Florida. And it was mostly Christian preachers. There was a Catholic priest in it for a while. There was a couple Buddhists that came and went a couple times, but mostly it was ministers and reverends, or whatever you call them, who were the number one preacher in various churches around town. And these were obviously, and they knew it, they were the more open-minded ones because they were willing to sit together and have an open conversation with a Buddhist or with a Swami. And so we had that going on for something like 5 or 6 years. And it just has happened. It just kind of faded away. In fact, the preacher who used to keep the mailing list and be the one that says, let's get together next month, he ended up moving away and moved to, I've forgotten where, North Carolina, I think. And so then nobody ever followed through with it. He was the guy. It wasn't a formal organization. It was very informal, but he was the guy that would put out an email. And we would usually meet at somebody's church around town. We had meetings. We met, I think 3 or 4 times we met in my townhouse that I used to live in before we had the ashram. And there were a couple, I think probably 3 or 4 over time, chaplains from the U.S. Air Force, which has bases nearby here. And I remember one chaplain fella who had been a chaplain in the military for something like 20 years. He was not old, but he was not a young fella. He was probably mid-late 40s, maybe 50 years old. And one day it was the first time he was there, we're all sitting there having fun together and just enjoying one another's company. And this fellow says, I got something to say. And we all said, okay. He said, I have read about such meetings as this, but this is the first time in my life that I've ever experienced it. And he just went on and on about how much he was enjoying being together with us, just having conversation. And we did not reconcile all the world religions. One day, one of the fellows said, it was just so beautifully said, we don't agree on anything, but we sure like coming together, don't we? And everybody sort of nodded and smiled and said, yes. It was a very, very pleasant time. Ma Tree had met Roger. I've told you about Roger, and you met him in the Target store. Remember that? I ran into Roger a week or so ago in the Publix.
Nice.
And I looked at him and he looked at me and said, hello, And he says, I now have a second job. He's still the preacher, but
Yeah.
he now works in a mortician place, where dead people go and they have services and bury people and cremate them and all like that.
Honorable job.
Huh?
Honorable job.
It's an honorable job. He told me that, and I said, that's fabulous. I said, that's a perfect job for you because you're so kind with people. This man has a beautifully loving heart. I just really like him tremendously, and he likes me. And we run into each other around town. Probably once a year, we run into each other somewhere, and it's kind of fun.
Your story reminds me of a documentary that we once saw about Daryl Davis that Averill was posting, that he is a big black jazz musician. And I mentioned that he's black because he befriends people from the KKK, and basically saying that, how can you hate me if you've never met me? And he truly treats them as their best friend. He does things for them that none of their own friends would do. And it's sincere. It's not a game. It's not a head game. He truly just is
very fascinating.
Very fascinating man. And he...
We could find one of his things on YouTube again. I'd like to look at that again.
Yeah. And
the link. Send me the link. I'll take a look at it.
It might be on Netflix. Daryl Davis, I remember his name. And so he, because of that, and with a lot of love, he does that, and he does break boundaries. And I remember that the Black Lives Matter group, which have their own, they are doing their own attempts to make things better, in a sense, was really opposed to what he was doing. At least certain people.
Yes, some were. And I recall in him telling his story, he had a collection of KKK clothes.
Because ex-members gave that
plans. He would befriend a KKK person, and they would become friends. And the guy says, "Now that I know you, I can't do this anymore." And the KKK guy would resign the KKK and give this black man his uniform.
Yes.
And this Daryl said, some people told me I should throw these away. I should get rid of these because they're bad. And he said, they're not. It's something like, they're gifts to me from a friend.
Yeah.
How can I throw them away?
And I think that happens with true dialogue. I think when people truly have an okay, and I think it was Wouter who sent me a link to a video about Heineken, which is a beer company, in which they put people together that have opposite views, and they make them do some things and tell something about them. And then they show them each other after that, after having a good conversation, they showed them the person's view. It's projected on a screen that one is like a white male supremacist and the other is a feminist or something, and they're opposed to each other, and so they're expressing their thoughts, and then they're watching themselves say that, and they feel embarrassed that they have such a strong opinion about someone who, now they've met someone. Then I'll post that link too. And because it's just amazing how conversation, when you really are face to face, looking into someone's eyes, talking towards each other, and having an open mind and open view, how these boundaries and misconceptions, they break away.
Nice story.
Yeah, I'll thanks vouch for. So yeah, I'll post all of that, which I remember
and that's the spirit of what touched me since last night, as I pondered why this might be an enjoyable conversation. Because we as yogis, we have some pretty profound philosophy and practices. And so how to use that in a way that's not exclusionary, and how we can practice, cultivate seeing it in religions that we may not personally follow or philosophically agree with.
Yeah. And on top of that, having a more open-minded to watch the own clashes that we still have towards certain boxes also. I mean, because we're pretending to be all inclusive, but we do, there's still some skadas in the back of my mind, in the back of the minds, and projecting outward. I think also that always, shakes up things too. When we talk about religions like this, how many people have been brought up in in limited views and thus broke free from it. And
Mm.
and
Anyway, anybody have any other thoughts? A whole lot of love. Nellie's got pretty free-floating fingers today. Hearts and an Om.
I thank you, because I only see is white. So thanks for that. It's
You
not.
only see white?
Yeah, on my screen, and you now have a message from Nelly, but there's no text or pictures in it for me. It's just
Oh,
so thanks for saying that there's a heart and an Om in it.
there's a bunch of little hearts and an Om sitting in the middle of it.
Facebook to see what she did there then.
Okay, did I miss anything down here?
Oh, there it is. Now I see it. Beautiful. So the people who watch the show, they see it. I just don't see it.
Anybody else have any other profound wisdom or sort of closing reflections?
Om Tat Sat.
Rojo's laying on the floor being quiet. Raj is being quiet over there. Oh, well. We're carrying the day, Ma.
That's okay. That's her job, Swami.
Okay.
Her loving job.
Rojo said Om.
There you go.
There you go. Anyway, so there's something to it. I make my sort of final comment that exploring the religions in one way or another and finding the yoga within the religions is a very fruitful, insightful experiment to play. Something like that.
Once when I was cantering for church.
Once when you were what?
Cantering.
She was cantering. I don't even know what that is.
It's where you stand in front of them and you plunk out a couple of things. And
what does that mean, to plunk out things?
Like the organist will play a very short sentence on the organ that's in the.
And that's called plunking?
Well, I called it plunking because if it was me, I'd be deep, 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 like one finger typing equivalent. Anyway, so it's a short call and response. I sing, and the Lord said blah, blah, blah.
And the Lord said blah, blah, blah.
And then just like
that's Rojo plunking.
The audience would say, the Lord said blah, blah,
and then so a call and repeat.
So I was volunteering for that in a particular church in college for a year or so. And I started trying to talk to the priest about the idea of, as you said, the yoke and unity and the sages, and basically
talking to the priest about that. And
he basically started saying, well, that's kind of blasphemous.
That's blasphemy.
Yeah.
So that's a good example. She was trying to do something about unity in the church, and the priest said, no, that's blasphemy.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, is a perfect example of this thing, where we may hold inclusiveness with what we see as obvious, where I said, like, it's obvious that everybody came from the same source. What do we do in the company of another person like that preacher she was talking about, who is exclusionary, that says, no, that's blasphemy?
Did not want to hear the idea that Jesus might have been a yogi.
Did not want to hear that Jesus might have been a yogi.
No, and then it's better to refrain from saying those things, because otherwise we're harming.
Yeah, but
when the door is really closed,
how to refrain from saying things, but without that refraining becoming accidentally suppression and hiding out of fear or something like that. There's an art to this.
Very much.
And I think it's also a good example of why satsang is useful, so we can hang out together
in truth.
We can hang out together in this kind of way. June just joined in.
Hi, June.
It's 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Don't join us. Watch it later again, indeed.
Yeah, I hope there's something. You have, a lot of this relates, I think.
It's 11 for my webinar.
Yeah, it's time for So it's the hour, time to go. Nice conversation. Thank you, Ma. Thank you all for visiting and playing. Aranka says, all with ahimsa. Yes, that's a big spirit of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
First, cause no harm. It's a sweet challenge, says Nellie. Yes. And with ahimsa. Good key point. So thank you all for visiting. Thank you again, Ma.
Thank
And
you.
remember, I have not posted it yet, but 5 hours from now, we will be together with Preacher Leela. I haven't seen Leela in here with us this morning yet.
And this one I will join, Swamiji, because it's 10 o'clock instead of 11 tonight because of our early change of the hour.
Okie dokie, but we will be together with Preacher Leela on Sunday. More of the wisdom of the ancient sages, Mundak Upanishad, 5 hours from now. And I will post the link thing, and we will be together to do that. Okay, in the meantime, have a nice meditation or a nice contemplation or just a nice day.
For all of the above.
Nice contemplative meditation in action day.
Yes.
Nice contemplative drive.
And Raj is going to have a nice contemplative drive back to Savannah.
Beautiful.
Nice to have Raj here a couple days, isn't it? 4 p.m. Chicago time. Yes, that's exactly right.
10 Dutchy time and Spanish time and Belgian time and German time. Bye, everyone.
Says Om. Om Tat Sat, everybody. Bye-bye.